Hello, your Untamed Life listeners. Welcome. Today we're speaking with Sari Parkinson. This episode is speaking actually a lot about grief and loss. We came into this episode wanting to speak about health and wellness because she's a metabolic health coach. She's helping everyone over 45 and 50 live a healthier life. And she's kind of paving the way. She really is because she is now a mature model and things like that. We met because we are an empire building group. We are building multiple businesses with multiple income streams. So we really thought we were going to speak about that direction, but we found that we had a connection through our loss. And that is what we kind of unpacked. And we spoke about how it affected her family and herself. And it was just interesting how the timing worked out for us with our stories. So I enjoyed this episode. I hope you do too. It just goes some places that it needed to go. So I do hope you enjoy it and let me know what you think at the end. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode. Today I'm speaking with Sari Parkinson, and this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about all things life and death, and I'm just going to dive straight into it. She is an incredible human who's transformed her health, and her mission now is to help women 45 to 65 move from feelings of frustrated to fabulous. There's so much there to unpack. You used to be a metabolic health coach and a speech pathologist. So this is going to be really cool. But thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. Great to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. So I love to just start like where you're at now, and then we'll dig into going back and all of that. What are you up to?
Right now, I am in the process of really ramping up to launch my metabolic health coaching business online. I've got a few balls in the air. I'm also looking to acquire businesses. I've recently got an equity share in a new startup that's Australian based, but it's got a Dubai arm, and we've got some exciting projects underway that could be really, really amazing. Just can't talk too much about them at the moment. So that's probably the big things. But I've also started just in the last month getting into mature modeling. So I'm going to be able to use that for a way to connect with more people and I guess get my message across about being healthy over 50, over 45, over 50, and so on.
Yeah, I love that. And we were talking just before we jumped on about how like you grew up in the age of modeling where it was like you need to be a size zero and all of the crazy diets that everyone went on and what it's like now. How has that changed now for you?
From what I hear, just being really new to it, is that, there's this huge demand for all types of bodies, all types of age groups. Everyone's very aware of getting older people into modeling to represent their brands, knowing it's such a huge sort of growing industry. So yeah, I didn't really know that. I went to get a personal branding shoot done for my health coaching business, and they said, "Hey, we think you'd be really good to be a mature model." And I thought, "Oh, okay."
That's
I
so
could do it
cool.
when I was younger because you had to be sort of like skinny, flat-chested, size 8 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe that used to be the normal. Like even when I was growing up, it was like size zero, wear low rise jeans, and like yeah, if you're like anything else you do, if you eat today, you're fat. Like basically, it's
Yeah, I used to
pretty
grow
much.
up like I was always one of those people that I was never didn't really struggle with weight terribly, but I would always put it on quite quickly. So, I used to stick all these signs, you'd open the cupboard up and I'd stick signs saying fat on top of certain, whether it was a sultana container or the biscuits. And certainly I grew up with that feeling of having to restrict what I'm eating and always count calories and always exercise. And it became this big sort of constant effort.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder even if like the people that were causing that are even aware that that happened. Because yeah, we all did that, fat shaming yourself or doing a heap of cardio after you had like one bite of something you thought was bad food. It's just wild. I'm so glad that you were asked to be a model.
Yeah, I mean, I do love that I do go these days, I'm 56, but I see a lot of young girls, and they are wearing shorter outfits and they are a lot more body confident, I think, despite, that the messaging isn't always great to them. I think there's a lot, young girls have a lot more sense of, I'm really sexy or powerful and I've got great curves, and they might have a bigger bum and it's all sort of good.
Yeah.
Except it's kind of going the other way and people are getting all sorts of, trying to match that curvy bum or, the really
Mm.
full lips and that look.
The plastic surgery, right? With the like you're putting like silicone implants in their bums and their hips. I've seen that. It blows my mind. Um I feel like almost the song that I got a big butt and I cannot lie, that song.
Love that
I was like
song.
that helped us all get out of the really skinny and now it's gone too far.
Used to sing that. They're not little, they're young adults now. Well, yeah, they used to sing that. I got a big butt, I cannot lie.
And it's been good. Like it did drive a lot of, now we're lifting a lot of weights and we're getting like natural bums that way and shapes and curves that way. But that can also be its own downfall where you're like, I'm tracking all of my food and I've overdone it all. But for me personally, that did help me a lot to track my food and then be aware that not like no food is bad food. That helped me get over that hurdle of the 90s chaos. Mm.
So what was good about the tracking specifically?
Oh, it just showed me that like, well, you can track like your chocolate bar and then it not be like ruining your life that you just had a chocolate bar. And I was
Yeah.
like, so it broke that kind of pattern in my brain of like you can have the chocolate bar. And you're not like but then it gets to the point of like, you're not over calories, right? And then if you do have some good coaches, which I did, it was like you can go over your calories. It's not the end of the world. It's more about how you feel than how you look. It's not how much you weigh. It's like you will weigh more with muscle. That was really a big barrier buster as well. I was like, okay, I can deal with that. And it is still hard, like as you're going through it, but you just start to get more and more adjusted to being that kind of uncomfortable
Mm.
in that own way. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a history of of dieting and counting calories, and it's definitely a process where you've sort of got to work out what works well. And it was really helpful for me when I used to count calories. Um, just even that you could look at, oh, how much protein am I getting, or just becoming aware of what you're putting in and how frequently, and is that the most nutritious thing that you're putting in, and what could you
Yeah.
substitute? But like you said, not, getting stuck into yourself if you have a chocolate bar one day, if you have a chocolate bar, a
Yeah.
couple of glasses of wine, because the next day is a new day. Just,
Yeah, and
not
just forget
that
about it, really.
have an awareness, but
Yeah. And I did a lot of, I focused on macros, not calories. And I was like, that was game changing. I'm like, because then you're
oh,
like, I'm having a chocolate bar, but then I'm also having some chicken later. And like, those are my protein. Like, I'm gonna get there. It's important. But actually, speaking of protein, do you want to talk about what you're doing with your health coaching in terms of diet?
oh, sure. Well, as a health coach, I mean, I don't know. See, there's this word coaching, there's a lot of coaches out there. And I think what I've recently sort of come to be aware of is that when you say you're a coach, I think a lot of people think that, and a health coach, oh, yes, you're going to tell me how to eat and what I should eat, and that we are going to be like sports coaches, the ones that are sort of on the side of the soccer field screaming, do this, do that, do this.
Hmm.
And I've, gone through my many, I didn't used to follow lots and lots of diets, but I have morphed into this carnivore diet, which will come up later. But essentially, it's a very low carb diet. So I did all this deep diving into that through my sort of wellness journey. I had a few issues that I needed to overcome. And at the end of that, yes, I decided, oh, this is so fascinating. I have to let other people know about it, because honestly, now I don't have to weigh myself. My life is so simple. All my health markers have improved. I just have to get this message out. So then finally decided to go and become a metabolic health coach. Thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to be able to tell everybody
Hmm.
about this stuff and what they need to do. But health coaches, we don't tell people what to do. We help people get to what their idea of what their best health is for them, the way that they want to get there. But we've got the training that can then provide sort of the science and the evidence behind it. So if the client wants to know more, we can say, look, we've got access to all of these materials. And it's really just supporting our clients and helping them be accountable along the way. So that was quite hard because previously I'd been a speech pathologist, and as a speech pathologist, you're the expert, and parents come to you and children come to you, and you literally do tell them what needs to be done, and every single minute of every day is about helping people by telling them what to do. So it was a real flip for me becoming a health coach, and I still have to it's hard to sort of sit back sometimes and let people come to their own discoveries, but it's
Yeah.
also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've actually been thinking about that recently too. Like experts, like we go to experts just because they've done what we've done or we want to do, right? Or they've researched what we've done. Hopefully, they've also done it or, been a part of an experiment or seen an experiment or seen all of the in-depth. So, like, I was thinking about it in terms of like a vet, like you go to a vet because your dog's doing something they would recognize and they've seen before, and like they help you decode it, and they're there for that. They're not there to, and they're giving you answers, but they're giving you answers from experience and other places, not just just because they're ultimately better or more educated than you or anything like that. Like, I love that about it. But I love that you finding that you get to help them bring their own answers out of themselves. I think with food it's very important because you end up, because everyone I think needs a little bit different. So it's always good to like help them tune into their intuition and see what works for them and what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, the clients are, when they ask me for specific information, I can say, well, in my experience or for me or what I know is, and I
Mm-hmm.
can say, oh, look, can I share something with you or may I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
Different to being the experts, and it would just be, oh, right, well, what you need to do now is 1, 2, 3, 4, go and do this and come back.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. How are you finding that? Are you like being able to lean into your intuition and guide them that way?
It's interesting, this word intuition. I mean, I guess obviously it's a word I've heard for my whole life, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot more awareness in society, or I think we've moved maybe through COVID to a sort of a more spiritual place. And people, I don't know whether it's the younger age group, but I think people do use this word intuition a lot more. And it came up, I didn't expect it to, but with my coaching, the word intuition comes up a lot. And it is very much that you use your intuition, and part of that is being able to read body language and tone and pick up on very subtle signs in facial expression. Um, so yes, we do use a lot with our clients, and it is one of the biggest things that we have to do. You can see I'm a bit of a talker, but what we have to do is create a lot of space. So sometimes there might be conversation, questions, and it's my role to just wait, not say anything. You can see that your client is working things over in their mind, and it gets to the point where it's almost like, wow, this is so much space. But then the client, it's amazing because they don't often get that much time to just be in their own head thinking without interruption and having this entire sort of space just focused on them and their needs. And you can see them finally coming to a discovery and a realization. And yeah, so intuition's a very big part of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you're giving them the chance to like take their power back. I feel like as you're holding that space for them, like in the 90s and all of the things, we were really giving our power away to like, well, the next diet has the answer, or this person has this expert has the answer. We've done that so much. I feel like we've all disassociated from our bodies completely, and you're just giving them that moment to be like, especially probably like moms and things, you're always on the run and you're never like paying attention to your bodies, your needs, and you're just like giving them a moment to be like, oh, actually that doesn't feel good, that does feel good.
Definitely. I mean, even before a coaching session, before I've even got online with the client or seen them, I take time to just sort of do my deep breathing, ground myself, get into that sort of space where, I've got to put all my other worries out of the way. And then often when the client first joins me, we might do just sort of a couple of moments of just deep breathing and grounding to become present. It's
Mm.
very, I can see you've got, is that a mood board behind
It
you?
is, yeah. My plant and my mood board. Yeah,
Very
very like leaning into the spiritual of lately. And I do think, yeah, you're right with when you said like COVID really brought that out on us because we all had a moment to like breathe, and not that it was a good moment, but we did have the chance to kind of slow down, some of us, not all of us, and just be like, oh, is this really the life I want? Is this really how, or is my health or your health caught up to you? For some people, I felt like, because you got to slow down. It's like when you go on a vacation and you come back and you're super sick because you had a chance to slow down. So I definitely think that shifted everything in everyone. So it's cool that you've seen that.
Mm. Yeah, COVID, that was interesting.
It
For
was.
me, it was particularly interesting because, as you know, it was sort of the beginning of 2020. And
Mhm.
at the beginning of 2020, I was January, I was having a wonderful trip skiing with my husband and family in Snowmass with my three boys. And we'd put this trip off for a while because my
Mhm.
husband's mum had been sort of suffering from stomach cancer and had been going through a long battle. So we'd put the trip off the year before thinking that, oh, we might lose her. Finally, we came to the next Christmas and she was still alive, and we went off and did our amazing family journey. So, we're not sort of one of those families that went off and did glamorous trips all the time. We, save up quite a lot. And this was the time when, as a family, we just really bond, because there's not too many things that, middle-aged mum and dad can do with their older teenage sons and all have a great laugh together. So, I
Mhm.
used to ski with my husband, and he was the one that sort of taught us all how to ski. So we were over in Snowmass, and my husband had some tummy pains. And then we got back. It was just the start of COVID. And unfortunately, about 6 weeks after he got back, he passed away from a very aggressive form of bowel cancer and colon cancer.
Mhm.
So in addition to, COVID, I mean, in some ways it was not a blessing for us by any means, but it meant that my boys were sort of, in lockdown at home. So their dad had died, but they didn't have to go back to school and sort of deal with the whole, oh, what's going on. And they got to sort of hunker down in their rooms, and it was a time for us to all sort of be together as a family. But the downside for them, for my two younger ones in particular, was, well, particularly my second one. My middle one was in year 12. So that was a really bad time to have lockdowns and dad dying, and he was not a particularly engaged student to start with. And then my little one was 14. I say little, but he was 14.
Mhm.
But then didn't go back to school. And there's all those lockdowns. And then with his dad dying, it sort of triggered anxiety. And then going back to school was just overwhelming. And, sitting in your bedroom being told by your maths teacher, you've got to do all these assignments, but it's easy to just game at the same time. So he sort of really hasn't been back to school since then. And, struggling a bit with just social anxiety. I mean, thankfully, he's got a big bunch of friends, but yeah, COVID was weird for us. And in addition to that, we couldn't have a funeral. And even when we had our mini sort of service, which was just the immediate family, my husband's parents and my parents, they wouldn't even let me and my three boys in with my husband's casket at the same time, which was an
That's
absolute
horrible.
joke. Given what we sort of, like, we were living in the same house, we were doing everything together, we traveled in the same car, and yet at the funeral home, we had to go in two by two. So it was like me and my eldest, me and my second one, me and my third one, then me and my mum, or then my husband's mum. It was farcical. And I
That's
can't, I'm in a state of grief. So I'm not sort of there saying, hey, you got to bloody well let me in. I'm kind of just like a
these
child that
days, yeah.
does that to you, sort of. You're just sort of helpless. You're in all these emotions. Your loved ones only died like less than a week ago. Um, yeah, so I've got a lot of resentment about, I mean, I don't carry it with me. I've moved on. But when I think back, I think that was so cruel, and all those people that were in hospital that were unable to see their loved ones before they passed away.
Yeah. Um, I feel like now I know why we've come together for this conversation even more. My mum passed away at the same time in May 2020, um, in lockdown, and she passed away in Florida, and I couldn't go there, and I had to deal with the grief through COVID as well. And just watching, I feel you so much in that resentment. It's just so ridiculous. And my partner's like 9-year-old grandfather was in the hospital too. No one was allowed to go see them. Like it was just wild, horrible. Um, how is your son doing now? Is he studying at home?
Oh, look, this is actually, how I said before I got on that, yeah, I'm an open book. This is the most difficult thing I have to speak about. I can speak about losing my husband and my own, challenges and stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
do get emotional when I talk about my kids because, as a mother, you feel really responsible um, for really helping them to move forward and to cope. Uh, and really things aren't great, but there's lots of little forward movement. I mean, last year we moved out of our home that we'd been in, and the boys had grown up in with their dad, and we'd been there for 13 years. And, I single-handedly kind of moved over to this place. And that was good because it's a bit of a fresh start. But to sort of try and answer your question, my little one who was 14 is now turning 19, and he's really finding it hard to get the confidence to go for his L's. He's
Mm-hmm.
terrified of driving a car because he thinks that he might kill someone or do something wrong. He's really scared about making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Using his dad really sort of shook his confidence. Uh, I've said, look, even if we just go out, I've lined up a couple of jobs for him. We can just go out and just do 1 hour a week, or we'll do some volunteer work. And he thinks that's quite good, but when push comes to shove, he finds it really quite daunting. And we did have psychologists to see. He refused to come out of the house with me. He was so just overwhelmed by it. I ended up going a few times on my own, and it was sort of like, oh well. And I've explained to him that, if you need some help and you don't want to speak to me, or you don't want to see a counselor, there's all these services online, and you don't have to say, hi, this is my name, this is my problem. You just log in and you say hello, and then you can wait for the other person to say, hi, why are you here? And it's as simple as that. But luckily he's got good friends, and he's got his friends coming over, and he goes out and he goes to parties, but we've got a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the second one that's turning 21 is in a similar position, did have a job, and had a long period actually of depression in bed. When his dad died, he put on probably about 20 kilos, and he was just this beautifully handsome boy, but then ended up, with the most terrible acne, in his bedroom, surrounded by rubbish, food rubbish they didn't want to clear up,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't really want me to. And he did speak of killing himself, or of he didn't really say he would, but his friends did, reach out and say they were worried about him. Um, so I spoke to him a fair bit about that, but they're doing quite well. Both of them need to get a job, and my oldest one has recently sort of moved out, and he's a muso and working at managing a pub, and has a lovely girlfriend. So he's doing okay, but he also was in hospital after his dad died because of all these heart issues. When you've got that sort of like panic attacks, his heart was racing, he thought he couldn't breathe, and he went into casualty, and they said, look, this is just what grief does sometimes. So I
Yeah.
think he also lives with a state of anxiety that, is really quite tense all the time, finds it hard to relax, something that we're always trying to have ongoing conversations about. But when I'm also rushing around, I'm trying to start a new business, got all these other things going on, I do feel as a mum, but everyone has their own journey. My boys have me as a role model. I'm always there to support them. So I have to trust that their journey will go the way it's meant to go for them, and that we'll get there. I've learned a lot about letting go of control, And I've had to let go of like fear, because as a mum, you get really freaking scared. Oh my God, what's going to happen to my kids? What's their future going to be like if they don't have a job now? And, you know, because society tells us you must do X, Y, and Z, go to uni, get a job. So I've had to just sort of, learn about one day at a time, present moment. You can only do what you can do, and so on.
Definitely. Yeah. And yeah, it ends up being kind of like a dysfunctional grief. That's definitely where I ended up too. And you're doing a great job. I think by relinquishing, letting go of the control, they do really need to move through that themselves. And they're probably putting pressure on themselves to get out of it as fast as you would have or you want them to, but they can only do as much as they can, and we can do the best we have with what we have at our disposal with our resources, like internal resources. And yeah, it sounds like they're working through it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, we'll get there. I mean, their, father-in-law, sorry, their grandfather, my father-in-law, husband's father, texted me this morning. He just come back from a cruise, and he has to put at the end of his text,
Mm,
are the boys, have they got jobs yet? And so there's
yeah.
been a lot of outside pressure because everybody else's anxiety about what's going on for them. And I've had to just sort of also, like, no, yeah, it's a concern. We're dealing with it. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But you got to weigh up, how much is mothers sort of wanting to go too softly? You do need to get out of your comfort zone. I talk a lot to to both of them about this, really, that you just, diamond doesn't develop unless it's under pressure. You do have to get outside of your comfort zone. You've got to realize what's not working for you. Is this, and this is where coaching is amazing, actually. And it's been really helpful with my kids, because rather than telling them what to do, which is what every parent wants to do, well, me anyway, you can say to them, so, how do you imagine your future?
Mhm.
Contrast what their future might be like to sleeping in till 2 p.m. every day now and not going to work. And what do they like about their life now? What would they like to change? And it's been helpful in that sense.
Yeah, definitely like future pace them, be like, well, what do you want it to look like? And then they'll figure out the in between that they will. As someone who I definitely had crippling anxiety and I've only just kind of cleared it, I definitely agree with like you need to be outside your comfort zone, and that can be in a lot of ways where, I always put pressure on myself to get all the career things going and all of that. That gave me a lot of anxiety, but I was able to do like sports that were like scary. Like I was not good in social situations or speaking on stage or any, speaking in front of people. Or,
Really?
yeah, I was really bad at it. I would faint in front of people and stuff like
What
that. I would,
say?
I would faint, like I fainted in front of people.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I've never
Oh,
heard
really?
say that. So as a speech pathologist, I remember standing up in front of this audience of doctors and nurses, and there might have only been 40 or 50.
Hmm.
But I think I just used to hyperventilate because, I wanted to do
Yeah.
well. And then I
Yeah.
stood up and I was nervous, but I was just like, okay, I'm nervous, just breathe. But then you sort of over breathe. No, I stood up to make this presentation, and then they're all looking at me, and I had to go and sit down because I literally fainted.
Yeah, I've been there. And yeah, but now here we are just talking about everything and it's okay. But yeah, I used to like it would be hyperventilating and like butterflies that like are choking you to death kind of thing. And especially even after COVID, I can relate like coming out of that and like seeing people. I was in a mall. I basically had like a panic attack, like
Mm.
and grief gave me a panic attack, definitely. Which I was just literally in my bed. I can't even remember. Oh, I thought I had an illness. I was like, oh, there's a lump. I'm gonna die, and I had a panic attack. And I can relate to where your kids are coming from. Like after my mom passed, it was death can get you, and like the all these things came in as a reality of like, oh my God, like you can actually die. Like I ride motorcycles at like 200 kilometers an hour. Like after that I was like, I don't want to do that. I can actually die. And took me a long time to like slowly go back to like a normal regular human being's comfort zone, which is not very expanded. um and yeah, it was just a lot of like, okay, breathe through it, do a little thing, or do something that's like with someone that brings you comfort, or something that brings you comfort at the same time. Like I did that with I really liked jet skiing, but then I got a job as a jet ski tour guide speaking in front of people. That scared me. So it's like I could distract myself with this adrenaline thing that I like, and it, like moves the emotions through me. But,
Right.
but then I'm doing the thing that terrifies the shit out of me. So I always tried pairing those together.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
bad thing apparently. Um, yeah, so it sounds like you sort of did the reverse because I was always risk averse growing up. I was the eldest
Mm.
daughter. I was always sort of like, oh, don't do this and that, don't do that and don't do this and this will happen and that'll
I was
happen.
raised that way too, I think. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna go do the thing.
That's good because you must have some, but as a result of losing my husband, so he used to have this nickname for me, which was Moti, Moti, and that stood
Mhm.
for Mistress of the Impossible because
Oh, I
he
love
reckons I
that.
was like so risk averse that I always had every sort of scenario covered, like we're going to take this and do this because we don't want that to happen. But, when you lose someone and you lose them pretty quickly and they were otherwise healthy, you realize that actually at the end of the day, you have no control over, well, I mean, you obviously do over some aspects, you have control over your life and you can try and control your health and you've got choices around your relationships and so on. But in a way, the grief has sort of liberated me into um, just, being able to let go a lot better. You know,
Mm-hmm.
be will be. I
I
mean, I
can
wonder,
relate.
did grief change your spiritual outlook?
That's a good question. I definitely became more spiritual, and more people around me were spiritual. And actually, funnily enough, my mom was really spiritual, and a lot of like we didn't understand. I didn't. I like accepted it. And I really liked it, crystals, all the thing, and then I just didn't get it, and then I started being that person after. So definitely moved that into me for sure. And how I've moved through the grief ended up being with like a shaman, like the last bits of it, and there's still a lot,
Mm,
but I can relate to that part of yours as well. Like once I moved through, like, okay, now I can die from anything, and I moved to the point of like, well, if I can die from anything, then you got to just do all the big scary things. Like for me it was always people scare me, and running a business, leading, those kinds of things scared me. I was like, well, it's time to do it now because you could die anytime. So there's that double edge of all of it. So I'm glad it pushed you out of like your comfort zone. That's so cool.
yeah, and like I used to think, oh, I don't want to die before. Oh, I've got to die before my husband. Like he used to say, oh, I hope you die before me. I hope you because I would really hate to have to live without you or whatever. And I remember thinking, oh, God,
Mm-hmm.
so bad if I had to because I hated public speaking too.
Mm-hmm.
I had to, like speak at your funeral or do anything like that.
I
And it's
feel that.
funny
Yeah.
the things, when you lose someone, there's kind of, I mean, some people can say there's reasons, I've really had to step right out. I mean, he was the sole provider and well, I used to be a speech pathologist and had a bit of an income as well, but it wasn't sort of a full-time job. And we had this sort of well, head of the family, we're a team, and there was that sense of all, we were just a united, strong family. And then when you lose this sort of pivotal person,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no real income and no real career, and I had three boys to support, and we didn't own a house, and I didn't really, like when you're going along and you're married and you've got this great relationship, and he was really an amazing person and lovely family life, and then it's just cut off. What's strange is that all these sort of trajectories you saw, you always have a bit of an idea about where your future might be, where you thought, oh, well, might move to the country. And you don't know that that's going to happen, but you've got a few ideas. So you've sort of got this vision of all these different paths that your life could potentially take. And then when he died, it was just like, you can't see anything. You,
Mm.
there's, it was like, I just couldn't see anything. And maybe not having a permanent a permanent sort of role or being an income earner myself, it wasn't like I even had that to think, well, I'll still be, Sari the professional.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, didn't know where
Just
I
zero
lived,
direction.
don't know
Yeah.
what would happen. You don't know what's going to happen to your family, what's going to happen to your kids. So yeah, lots of out of comfort zone experiences.
Yeah. What did you end up doing? Like how did you end up moving forward?
Well, actually, I think that I've been very fortunate having been, well, I did have, a pretty good home life growing up. My parents were still together and Fraser's parents were still together. And also working as a speech pathologist, I've worked on teams of psychiatrists and social workers for many years. And my best friend is a psychologist. So I was sort of very aware of, emotions and feelings, and having worked with in the community health field, it's not like coming sort of straight out of a high powered, I don't know, financial role where I wasn't in touch with people and emotions. So I was pretty much aware that, look, it's fine to grieve, and yeah, I'm going to be a blubbering mess for a while. So I think it really helped to just accept. I did really just accept it. I just sat there like a blubbering mess, which
Hmm.
was, it was hard when you'd have your little 14-year-old coming to give you a hug saying, "Are you okay, mum?" And all you
Hmm.
do was, like look after them. So I do think, I mean, I do remember after Fraser died at one point thinking, right, well, that's really, 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 really sad and terrible, but that has ended. I've got a choice now. I have to go forward. I can either go forwards and make the most of it, or I can let it. I don't want to go forwards with it hanging over me and being this horrible, miserable, traumatic thing that I can't get out of.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just determined to do that. But what was also instrumental, like you, I mean, I've been a scientist, well, Bachelor of Applied Science as a speech pathologist, where we were taught that if something's not proven by science, then you don't do it. You can only do evidence-based practice. So I was very much a science-based person, and I would say that I was always an atheist. Really, I just believed that once you died, and that was it. But then, about 5 weeks after my husband died, I was like, there was something I just couldn't put my finger on. It wasn't just, yeah, I was grieving. Yes, he was gone. I understood all that, but there was something I couldn't understand, or I just felt uncomfortable. And it took me a while to work out what it was. And then I worked out that but where has his consciousness gone?
Hmm.
That really bothered me. So in true Sari style, then I had to Google it, look into consciousness, went right down the whole consciousness studies and near-death experiences, and then also found that I could get over my own. Oh, then I remembered an amazing meditation experience I'd had back in my 20s that I kind of freaked out a bit because it was an out-of-body experience, actually. So during this time, all these thoughts about consciousness, it made me remember certain things that had actually gone on over my life that I didn't really have explanations for, that I just kind of closed my mind off to and put in that, well, there must be a rational explanation for, but I'm not going to think about it. And so I also got back into meditating around that time and found that really, really helpful. I didn't really do a guided meditation. I just went back to what I remember doing that time in my 20s when I had an out-of-body experience. And it was just very much just breathing and grounding um and I started to do that daily. And I think that was enormously helpful.
Sounds really good. Yeah, that is actually the advice, right? Come back to your body and actually feel the feelings. I definitely went the other route for a long time where I was like, well, come into your body and then like distract yourself. I would always put on the guided ones and I was like, I can't be with myself. But more recently, I've had to realize that it's the only way through. It really is.
Yeah, I do remember sitting with that feeling, and it would come up at the strangest times. I just might be like shopping in David Jones and I might have been feeling fine all day. And then suddenly you just get this feeling like a big, black,
Mm.
cloudy, weighty, painful thing hanging around inside. And then I'd think, oh, like, what is that? Oh, and yeah, because it's reminding me of what I've lost. It was kind of reminding me of loss because I've probably been to David Jones a million times with my partner.
Mm.
But then I would just think, oh, when you really focus on how's it actually feeling? What is that? What does it look like? Where is it going in my body? And when you really try and just go, oh, this is how it's feeling, it truly just started to dissipate. It's like it was really kind of nebulous then. and then it would move on, at least for until the next time it came about. But it's been a long time since.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you feel like you get those still, or are they?
well, not so much, no. But what, in fact, it was his the fourth on March 22nd. It's just hit the fourth anniversary of his passing, so it's quite serendipitous to have this conversation now. And
Mm-hmm.
then when Easter comes up, at Christmas time, it's not nice. It's obviously a time when people really miss who's not there, but you've got a lot of people around you. Easter's a bit quieter, and for us, we didn't always go away camping or anything, but we would often just hang out at home and do the gardening, go to Bunnings, have barbecues, and just be really chill. So I find that the combination of March 22nd followed by Easter, I tend to feel a little bit kind of, I don't know what the word is, because fragile is too weak sounding, but I tend to retreat, need time on my own. It's not, there's probably a bit of sadness, but I don't really cry, but I am, kind of comes around and you go, oh,
Yeah.
Easter. I don't know. I don't want to, girlfriends say, come on, we're going out to this and we're going out to that. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe this year. I mean, it's coming up to 4 years for you as well.
Yeah. How I've wanted to lose count, but yeah, that's it. Um, yeah, every time on the anniversary and her birthday, it's just in February. I just start to like retreat the same. And like the first times it happened, I was like, okay, I'm taking that day and we're just doing something in nature and something like really good for your nervous system, and because it was just too much at the time. But yeah, now it is kind of like an unconscious thing. I'm like, oh, it's happening. Like even around in February, this one, I was right after I did a lot of the healing, and then a lot of conversation actually had to come up. It was like, I want to go away, but I had to actually talk to like family and work through stuff. And it's just like, I totally even like kind of like wanted to forget that it was her birthday. And so I didn't even think about it. But then it like happened all around it. I'm like, there's something around these dates and it's just crazy. And her birthday, sorry, her incident was right around my sister's birthday. I can't imagine how that is for her. Um, but it's just like, yeah, that those times always wait. The first year was so strange. At the beginning I was like, it was almost like delusionally, like not happy but delusionally like in that weird state. And then the first year, like on the anniversary, I just was like grief fucking central, and I did the weirdest stuff and I was not myself and nothing made sense, and I brought up all my old patterns of bad coping, and it was just really strange. But now it's taken me like the 4 years to I just learned recently that anything past a month of like the heavy grief is like dysfunctional, and I was like, well, it's been 4 years. um but like I'm also like, I'm glad I went through what I did, it was, no, it was horrible and it took till now, and I had to go through it like a deep psychological experience to like clear it. Oh, sorry, that fell down. um but I'm glad it like brought up so much more, and like so much understanding of yourself and people around you and and like what they were like. And yeah, and now I can finally I don't feel that heaviness, but only the last 2 months now. And I'm like, I can talk about it and not be like crying, or not want to cry, or not, feel like people are feeling sorry, or it's a weird thing when it happens. People around you just
Can I
go,
ask Amanda how your mum passed away? Or is that too?
yeah, no, that's all right. It was an accident. She was riding her bicycle with my dad, and then he had to witness. It was a vehicle that didn't stop. Yeah, horrible. Um, And so I think I don't, but the way that it happened, like, I definitely think, sorry, I'm losing my words now, but, um, there was like the possibility that there was something that might have happened to her, like she might have got ill after. It was when we learned about it, which is just some, um, what is it called when they check the body after?
Yeah,
And I'm like, I feel like the world was always like keeping her safe, and I feel like that's a fucked up way, but it kept her safe, of like she didn't have to go through, she didn't like the Western medical system, all of that. But it was just like, oh, that double-edged sword, there it is. But
yeah.
um But
definitely
at least, yeah, it happened in the way that it meant to. I don't know if you can say that.
so can I also ask another question?
Sure, yeah.
So you said you did weird things, and I can kind of, I mean, I don't think mine was really weird, but it is, you sort of, it's a weird feeling because you don't really feel like, you don't sort of in a way know who you are. And I
Yeah.
kind of did a little bit of weird things, not massively weird, but what did you do that was weird?
I yeah, just old coping mechanisms and like unhealthy habits, like being around people I shouldn't be around, like weird, just like I wasn't that person for a really long time, and I went back to being a person that maybe I was in my 20s that just couldn't cope, but I didn't understand it because I'm like looking at myself from who I am now, and I was like, what is happening? And just things around me started to like come at me too, like people that are just really like toxic, and just stuff started coming at me, and I'm like, this hasn't been a thing for my life for the last 3 years probably, and why are they all coming back now? And I just couldn't I just couldn't I wasn't behaving from a place um that I've been for I don't know. It was good though because I got to work through it. I was like, I thought I worked through all that. I don't know. I think I'm uncomfortable covering it. There's not that much there though. I was just like, it didn't make sense so much that I don't have the words for it. Um, but yeah, maybe I have to need to work.
Yeah, but I guess, I was sort of saying before we started that I sometimes think like death is the last taboo because you don't, like, I was 52 when my husband died.
Hmm.
I did not know anyone else who had, in my circle of friends, that had lost, thankfully, even a child or a partner,
Hmm.
you know, and particularly like 52, there's not a lot of widows or widow. I mean, there probably are out there, but we're not really seen. And, you don't really come out saying, hey, I'm a widow, and,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
celebrated, certainly. And then there's, I guess, the historic sort of image of a widow is someone that is, I don't know,
Always
old,
in black.
weak, and
Yeah.
scary, even, witch like, or and there's a lot of fear around death, but I came to sort of really understand that it's just the part of, I mean, we know it's the part of the life cycle, but we spend so much of our time, and even with this extreme sort of biohacking and everything, and this extreme focus on our health, even though as a health coach, I think we've got this amazing body that we've been given. Like, it's the most intricate, incredible gift, and therefore we should do everything within our power to nurture it. Like, if you had a fancy car, you put good oil in, and you get it serviced and so on.
Yeah.
uh, but I also think that we are we're souls on earth in this body, but death is part of our process, and it might happen when you're 70, it might happen when you're 110. But whereas I used to have this sort of, I used to strive, I want to live as long as possible. That's because I had this belief that once you died, it was all over. So
Hmm.
you're going to try and improve the longevity as much as possible. Whereas now, with a more spiritual outlook, I think, well, when I die, I'll be passing on to a different realm, and that's part of the natural evolution of things. And I don't want it to happen too early, mostly because my kids and family need me.
Hmm.
Um, but you're here on planet Earth to enjoy yourself as much as possible, I think, to connect with people and to learn.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we're here to heal, and like there's this thing. It's just like this thread that keeps coming back up that we are the light in the dark, and a lot of us are healing and raising the vibration of the planet, and that's like a whole part of everything. I think that's part of the journey we're on. Um, in terms of what you were saying too about, death is a taboo, like I I remember before it happened, I was so unable to. I was that person that comes up to people that have lost someone, and well, I wasn't even that person. I was like, oh, they probably don't want to talk about it. So I would like, not go there. And then I was someone who really I didn't want to talk about it, but it wasn't like freeing when I did talk about it. And then it also brought up this whole like, I don't know, this like connectivity that I had with people that had lost people, like these roomfuls of people just felt so different. I'm like, you've lost, like, I worked in a motorcycle bar at the time. And so these older people that were motorcycle riders, like born in the 80s or probably before. And um they were just like, they've lost like so many people. And I'm like, I understand you and you understand me in this whole new level. It was just so strange. And you can just feel their soul after that. And I was just like, wow, it like breaks this barrier. Um, I remember even before my mom died, there was someone staying with us. They got stuck with us in COVID, which was great. But he told me just before he left, finally he was able to get a flight out. And he told me that his mom passed away, and then he was like, he's like my soul human friend as well. And I was like, oh, that's horrible. Like, oh, I didn't say it terribly. It was a good conversation. I was like, I've only lost my dogs, and that hurt my soul so much. And then a month later, my mom died in a very similar way that his did. And I was like, okay, that's fucked. Now we're like connected even more. But yeah, like just how it just changes your perspective on like people grieving and like that conversation. And it's actually really, I think most people that are grieving would like to talk about it. I'm still kind of working that out.
Like surely, but generally out there in life, we've all pretty much lost someone. Some people, some of us
Something,
have
yeah.
in a more, confronting situation.
Mm-hmm.
But even children lose their grandparents or children lose their pets. But it was great. Yeah, it's kind of like when I then lost someone, there were people that would then tell me about who they had lost in a way that they wouldn't have before because
Yeah.
and then you said, oh, I didn't know that that your father died when you were very young and he died from bowel cancer and that you had to go through all this.
Mm-hmm.
No,
It definitely brings up the depth of the conversation more. And yeah, it's very strange, but it's so beautiful. I'm just like, oh my God, like you've gone through so, and I understand to a degree still, but they're still like, here's all of it. You're like, wow.
and so you saw a shaman, and
Yeah.
I was wondering, I also had 3 sessions with the shaman. It was one of it as well in just south of Sydney.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Well, it wasn't, it was actually because I was away with my parents on the first birthday, I think, after my husband had died. So mum and dad organised us to go down to Shoalhaven, which is by the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my old friends who'd been my sort of MC at my 21st, I just bumped into him on the street. And then he said, oh, hey. And then we all got together one night and then we went swimming in the river. And as he was walking in with my other mate, he goes, oh, yeah. He mentioned, oh, yeah, his girlfriend had told him about his spirit animal. And I went, oh, what's that about? And it turns out his girlfriend was a shaman. And,
Mm-hmm.
like these people you go through school with and went to sort of a conservative school and you just,
You're
don't.
like, what happened? Yeah.
She's a shaman because I think I'd only been hearing about spirit animals or something, earlier. So I was curious. So I just rang her up and had also been dating somebody that was maybe not the healthiest person for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw it a few times, and that was interesting. Um, I really mostly enjoyed the meditation part of it. For me, it was a long time ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like anything changed after?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I had to travel sort of for about an hour and a half to go and see her. So, and then I just got a bit busy. Um, I didn't actually end up doing any proper grief counseling or anything. I felt, actually for me, I felt like I really did not want to sit in a room of people that were speaking about grief. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's,
I wouldn't have wanted it
I
either.
could do that
Yeah.
now. So I was wondering if you'd done that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think a combination of doing my own research into consciousness, I read quite it was just sort of texts and things that were coming up on Instagram. I'm doing a deep dive into spirituality and watching shows, and doing my meditation. And then the best part was hanging out with my girlfriends and being like after I got past the 5 months and I actually could open my mouth and sort of say, what happened. We went out, and the next I've had some of the biggest laughs and
Mm.
best times as well in the last, few years, just with my girlfriends. So it's
No,
been
that's good.
good. Mm.
Change the dynamic for like the better, it sounds like.
Well, a couple have been divorced. Like my best friend had been divorced a few years earlier. And, when you're in a couple and when you're single, you don't always sort of mix. And I don't know if it was COVID or partly my age, the age group of friends that I'm with, but, like I'm not really asked around to couples' houses. I think that many people my age aren't, through COVID, they stopped doing all the dinner parties and all the entertaining. But really, if you don't have a few single friends,
Mhm.
be the gender, then yeah, there's not much going on. So I was very fortunate to have a couple of bunch of girlfriends. And also there's, your married friends still want to go out as well, but it's less in that couples. So actually, a friend of mine we've been planning on creating events for over 45s where people can just get together for fun, but socially, because when you're in your 20s and 30s, you'll just hang out whether you're dating or not. It doesn't really matter. You've just got a really big bunch of mixed friends. But then when you're in your 50s, it's sort of like everyone's in their couples or they're not. And then
No one
then
makes
you
sense.
go out like with your girlfriends, or the guys go out with the guys, or you go on dates, which is sort of one-on-one, but there's not a lot of just, hey, you'll hang out together. Because if you go to a pub, we might be our 50-year-olds, but then there's mostly 30, few 40s, a couple of 50s.
There's not really anywhere to go. I've noticed that even 30 onward. Like, why? Like, none of us want to be at that pub. This is all 20-year-olds being weird, and then like, no, there's nowhere for any of us to go. I would love if every age group had their own. So, what
Yeah.
have you been putting together with them?
Well, actually, at the moment, we're testing the market. So if any of your listeners think they would think it was a good thing, they could get in touch. But we don't know. I mean, I speak to people that are single, and I was chatting to a single guy the other day. He goes, "Oh, yeah, that'd be fantastic because single men, they get really nervous about approaching women. But if there was sort of like a function that wasn't just like a specific dating thing, and there
Hmm.
was some sort of introductory, like you'd get to go buy 5 girls a drink or something like that. He thought it would go well. So
That
we've
would
done a
be
little bit of
nice.
a Facebook test ad, but it's not really getting bites yet. So we're still trying to work out if there's a demand for it.
I'm sure there would be. Have you put it out in the Empire groups? I feel like there's some in there. Everyone's chasing their empires.
Well, no, I haven't done a questionnaire or a specific. I chatted to Mr. Aaron Sansoni, and he said, "Well, you go and do the Facebook marketing sort of
That's
test."
good, yeah. I wonder if like it reminds me of like an old party concept where it's like you wear a colored wristband or something that says you're single or married or what. So you didn't have that conversation of like I'm widowed or like you could
Yeah,
or those like you're saying the men are uncomfortable because of approaching because you never know, are they married, are they not, should I
true.
be doing this, and then
Yeah.
just breaking that like ceiling
There
of
are dating events that are sort of like, Encounter Dating does something where everyone gets, they'll get a bunch of singles and a bunch of, men and women together, and then they go around, they do a few sort of games. So,
that'd be
but
fun.
that's specifically sort of like dating over cocktails, whereas we just want to have a great big party, like a great big fun
Mm,
event. Anyway,
yeah,
we'll see.
just somehow signal that like you can talk to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does get like, and then that's like the wallflower situation of like primary school almost. Like, I can't go over there because like I don't want to intrude. Um, but that's so cool. I hope that comes together. Everyone listening, you need to let me know if you want to go in Sydney. That's awesome. Um, we've veered off of topics, but well, not even really. I'm happy that that's what we covered. Um, is there anything you wanted to cover outside of this?
No, look, it was really good recovering those issues. And in fact, I have to say, it's the first time, even though I've spoken about loss before, I haven't really spoken to a stranger on a, public sort of platform. And I was speaking to my mentor the other day, and part of what's holding me back, I think, in my career, like just really stepping out of my comfort zone,
Mhm.
is speaking about being a widow and how I feel a little bit like it's an important message to give to people that despite loss and challenges, that you can still start again, find your new path, and anything, can happen. And it does take courage. Um, but speaking about being a widow, and it feels a bit like taking advantage of the fact that my husband's passed away, it's not, that
Mhm.
doesn't make sense, but that's, it's like I don't want to
I felt
talk
that
about
too.
him and promote myself at the same time. That's sort of not real. That's a bit uncomfortable.
It's
Um,
such a big part of your life, though. Like, I wanted to not talk about it too, and then I'm like, well, people want to hear about because they've gone through it, or or they like the lessons that we've learned, and I don't know. I'll talk about it because it naturally comes up. My mom was like 90% of my life, like I'm like, oh, we used to do that. That was so fun. So it always comes up, and I'm like, oh fuck. I think it's powerful and potent, and if it comes up naturally, I don't feel like you're forcing it or anything.
no, I'd love to hear more about your mum one day. Maybe
Yeah,
that,
I'm happy to
yeah.
chat anytime. Yeah, I would love to hear more about your husband. Sounds like an awesome guy. Um, and we did want to talk about more like the light and the dark of what we're doing, right? So we've covered the darkness, and what you're
Oh,
doing now is the light, right? So,
yeah.
and the dark days, we did want to talk about that, but we don't have to. Um, It sounds that was a good conversation. I think we'll end it here.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Amanda. It's
No
been
worries. Thank you. Do you want to let our listeners know where they can find you?
sure. Yes, I am on Facebooks at Sari Parkinson and on Instagram as sariparkinson.mentor, and also new sariparkinson.model and
Amazing.
sariparkinson.life, or they can email me at sariparkinson.com.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. And I love everything that you're setting out to do and doing already, and going to be an inspiration to all the women over 50 modeling, of course. It's so
Oh,
exciting.
health coaching too. All right. Well, thank
Health
you.
coaching,
And
of course.
same for you.
Thank
Inspire
you.
people to transform and get beyond
That's what
their
we're
challenges.
doing. Yeah, we got to get over those hurdles so we can run our companies, lead, and do all the things that matter. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed that. We are exploring our comfort zones and our edges with every episode, every guest, and every episode I do by myself. If you have enjoyed this, please follow us on Spotify, leave a 5-star review or a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to us. We get to grow and have more informative guests on, more provocative guests if that's what you want. I am so down to see where this grows. In the meantime, follow me on Instagram at amanda.petra__, and I would love to chat with you in the DMs. What hit home, what didn't, what came to mind. It would be really cool. So I will see you there. And thank you so much. See you in the next episode. Although our podcast presenters and all guests strive to deliver accurate information, they cannot address your unique circumstances comprehensively. Therefore, the content shared by any speaker on this platform is not personalized advice for individuals and should not substitute professional medical or health guidance. It is crucial to consult a qualified medical professional or for personalized advice. Additionally, always seek guidance from a healthcare provider before making decisions regarding your health or that of your family. Furthermore, it's essential to recognize that what works for one person may not work for another, emphasizing individual responsibility for health decisions as promoted on our show. Thank you so much for listening to the episode, and we will see you on the next one.